Marcus Rivera looked at his watch and felt his heart sink. It was 6:45 in the morning and he was already 15 minutes late for work. His old Honda car had refused to start again this morning, making strange clicking sounds when he turned the key. He had tried 3 times before giving up and running to catch the first bus. The bus ride took much longer than driving. Marcus had to take 2 different buses to get from his small apartment to Sterling Industries, the big office building where he worked as a janitor. He pressed his face against the window, watching the city wake up around him. Early morning joggers ran past bus stops and coffee shops were opening their doors for the day. Marcus was a quiet man in his early 30s. He had kind brown eyes and always kept his black hair neat and short. Even though he was rushing, he still helped an elderly woman with her shopping bags when she got on the bus. That was just who Marcus was, always thinking of others even when he had his own problems. When the second bus finally reached his stop, Marcus jogged the last 2 blocks to Sterling Industries. The building was huge and made of glass and steel. It reached up into the sky like a mountain made by people. Marcus had been working there for almost 2 years, and he still felt small every time he walked through the front doors. The security guard, Tony, was at his desk reading a newspaper. He looked up and smiled when he saw Marcus. "Running late again, my friend?" Tony asked with a grin. "Car trouble," Marcus said, trying to catch his breath. "Thanks for keeping the door open for me." "No problem. You better hurry, though. I saw Mrs. Walsh checking the security cameras earlier. She looked like she was in one of her moods." Marcus nodded and headed quickly toward the elevator. Janet Walsh was the building manager, and she did not like it when people were late. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who always seemed to be looking for reasons to be angry with someone. The elevator took Marcus down to the basement level where he kept his cleaning supplies and uniform. The basement was quiet and cool with concrete walls and bright white lights. Most people never came down here. It was Marcus's world, separate from the busy offices above. Marcus walked to his small locker at the end of a long hallway. He opened it with a key he kept on a chain around his neck. Inside, his blue janitor uniform hung neatly on a hook. But there were other things in the locker, too. Things that might surprise anyone who looked carefully. On the top shelf sat an expensive black leather briefcase. It was the kind that important business people carried. Next to it was a stack of business cards held together with a rubber band. If someone had picked up those cards and read them, they would have seen Marcus Rivera, MBA, Harvard Business School. But Marcus did not look at those things now. He was in a hurry. He quickly changed out of his regular clothes and into his uniform. The uniform was clean and pressed, even though it was just for cleaning. Marcus believed that how you dressed showed respect for yourself and your work, no matter what that work was. As he changed clothes, Marcus thought about his daughter, Sophia. She was only 8 years old and had been sick last night with a fever. He had stayed up with her, putting cool cloths on her forehead and reading her favorite stories until she finally fell asleep. That was why he had overslept this morning. Sophia was the most important thing in Marcus's life. She had her mother's bright smile and curious mind. Every morning before work, Marcus would make her breakfast and help her get ready for school. Her babysitter, Mrs. Garcia, would pick her up and take her to school. Then Mrs. Garcia would pick Sophia up after school and stay with her until Marcus got home from work. Marcus finished putting on his uniform and grabbed his cleaning cart from the storage room. The cart had everything he needed: mops, brooms, cleaning sprays, toilet paper, paper towels, and trash bags. He had organized everything perfectly so he could work quickly and efficiently. The Sterling Industries building had 20 floors of offices. Marcus was responsible for cleaning 15 of those floors every night. He started at the bottom and worked his way up. It was hard work, but Marcus did not mind. He had learned that every job was important if you did it well. As Marcus pushed his cart toward the elevator, he heard footsteps echoing in the basement hallway. They were sharp, clicking sounds that could only belong to one person, Janet Walsh. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had hoped to start working before she noticed he was late. "Rivera." Janet's voice was sharp and angry. "Just where do you think you're going?" Marcus stopped and turned around. Janet Walsh was walking toward him quickly, her high heels making loud sounds on the concrete floor. She was wearing a dark blue business suit and carried a clipboard in her hand. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it made her face look even more angry than usual. "Good morning, Mrs. Walsh." Marcus said politely. I'm sorry I'm late. My car wouldn't start this morning. Your car, Janet said, shaking her head. It's always something with you, isn't it, Rivera? Last month it was your car. The month before that it was your daughter being sick. There's always an excuse. Marcus wanted to explain that Sophia really had been sick, that he had spent the night taking care of her because that's what good fathers do. But he knew Janet would not want to hear it. She had made up her mind about him a long time ago. I understand you're upset, Marcus said calmly. I'll work extra hard today to make sure everything gets done. Oh, you'll work extra hard, Janet repeated, her voice getting louder. How generous of you. Do you know what time it is, Rivera? It's almost 7 o'clock. You're supposed to be here at 6:30 every morning. That's what we pay you for. Marcus nodded. He knew what time it was. He also knew that he had never missed a day of work in 2 years, and that the building was always perfectly clean when he finished each night. But he also knew that arguing with Janet Walsh would only make things worse. You're right, Marcus said. I should have been here on time. It won't happen again. Janet looked at him suspiciously, as if she expected him to argue or make more excuses. When he didn't, she seemed almost disappointed. See that it doesn't, she said finally. I'm keeping track of these incidents, Rivera. This is going in your file. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking loudly in the quiet basement. Marcus watched her go, then sighed and pushed his cart toward the elevator. He had work to do, and feeling sorry for himself would not get it done. As the elevator doors closed, Marcus thought about Sophia again. Tonight, when he got home, he would help her with her homework and make her favorite dinner. He would read her another story and make sure she was feeling better. Everything he did for her. The elevator stopped at the first floor and Marcus began his day of work. He did not know that upstairs in the executive offices, important people were having meetings about the future of Sterling Industries. He did not know that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. For now, Marcus Rivera was just a janitor who was 15 minutes late for work. But sometimes life has surprises waiting for us in the most unexpected places. 3 days had passed since Marcus's last talk with Janet Walsh. He had been on time every morning since then, arriving at exactly 6:30 a.m. But this morning was different. This morning, Marcus was running late again, and this time it was much worse than before. Sophia had been very sick during the night. Her fever had gone up to 103 degrees and Marcus had to take her to the emergency room at the hospital. They had waited for 4 hours before a doctor could see her. The doctor said Sophia had a bad ear infection and gave Marcus medicine for her. By the time they got home from the hospital, it was already 4:30 in the morning. Marcus had only gotten 1 hour of sleep before his alarm clock rang. He felt tired and worried, but he still had to go to work. Mrs. Garcia had agreed to come early to take care of Sophia, but Marcus hated leaving his daughter when she was sick. Marcus ran through the doors of Sterling Industries at 6:50 a.m. He was 20 minutes late, the worst he had ever been. His hair was messy, his clothes were wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes from not sleeping. He looked like a man who had spent the night in a hospital waiting room, which is exactly what he was. Tony, the security guard, looked up from his newspaper with concern. Marcus, you look terrible. Are you okay? Sophia was sick, Marcus explained quickly. Had to take her to the hospital. Ear infection. Oh no, is she going to be all right? Yes, she'll be fine. The doctor gave her medicine. But I really need to get to work now. Tony nodded with understanding. He had children too, so he knew how scary it could be when they got sick. Go ahead, my friend. I hope Sophia feels better soon. Marcus hurried to the elevator, hoping he could get downstairs and start working before Janet Walsh noticed he was late. But as the elevator doors opened in the basement, his heart sank. There was Janet standing right by his locker with her arms crossed and an angry look on her face. Well, 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 Janet said loudly. Look who finally decided to show up for work. Marcus stepped out of the elevator slowly. He could see that Janet was angrier than he had ever seen her before. Her face was red and her hands were shaking with anger. Mrs. Walsh, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. Janet interrupted. You always have an explanation, don't you, Rivera? Let me guess. Your car broke down again? Your daughter was sick again? The bus was late again? Actually, yes, Marcus said quietly. Sophia had to go to the emergency room last night. She had a high fever and— Stop, Janet shouted. Just stop with the excuses. I am so tired of hearing about your personal problems. This is a workplace, not a daycare center. Your job is to be here on time, every day, no matter what's happening in your personal life. Marcus felt his face get hot. He had been patient with Janet for 2 years, but hearing her talk about Sophia like that made him angry. Still, he kept his voice calm and respectful. I understand you're frustrated, Marcus said, but my daughter was really sick. Any parent would have done the same thing. Any parent? Janet laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. Let me tell you something, Rivera. Responsible parents don't let their personal problems affect their work. They find babysitters. They make arrangements. They don't use their children as excuses to be lazy. Those words hit Marcus like a punch in the stomach. Janet Walsh was calling him a bad parent and a lazy worker. Nothing could be further from the truth. Marcus worked harder than anyone in the building. He stayed late when needed. He never complained, and he always did excellent work. But the worst part was that other people were starting to arrive for work. The elevator kept opening, and employees were walking through the basement to get to the parking garage. They could hear every word Janet was saying. Mrs. Walsh, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice down. Maybe we could talk about this in your office. No, Janet said even louder. I want everyone to hear this. I want everyone to know what happens when people think they can just show up whenever they feel like it. More people were gathering now. Marcus recognized some of them. There was Sarah from accounting, who always said good morning to him when he cleaned her office. There was Mr. Johnson from Human Resources, who sometimes asked about Sophia. There was Linda from the cafeteria, who always saved him a sandwich when he worked late. All of these people were watching as Janet Walsh humiliated Marcus in front of them. He could see the surprise and concern on their faces. Some of them looked angry at Janet, but they couldn't say anything because she was management and they were just employees. This is the 4th time this month you've been late, Janet continued, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. The 4th time? Do you think this is acceptable? Do you think Sterling Industries pays you to show up whenever you feel like it? Marcus wanted to point out that one of those times was only 5 minutes late because of a traffic accident on the highway. Another time was because Mrs. Garcia had been in a car accident herself and couldn't watch Sophia. But he knew Janet didn't want to hear explanations. She had already made up her mind. I take my job very seriously, Marcus said calmly. I've never missed a day of work in 2 years. The building is always clean when I finish. I work hard every single day. Working hard doesn't matter if you can't show up on time, Janet snapped. Reliability is the most important thing in any job. And you, Rivera, are not reliable. Marcus felt his hands shake a little, but not from fear. He was angry now, really angry. But he had learned long ago that losing his temper only made things worse. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked Janet Walsh straight in the eyes. My daughter had a 103-degree fever last night, Marcus said clearly so everyone could hear. I spent 4 hours in the emergency room making sure she was okay. She's 8 years old and she needed her father. I would do the same thing again tomorrow if I had to, because that's what good parents do. Some of the people watching nodded their heads in agreement. Sarah from accounting had tears in her eyes. Mr. Johnson from Human Resources looked very uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Janet's face got even redder. She was not used to people standing up to her, especially not janitors. That's it, she shouted. I've had enough of your attitude and your excuses. You're fired, Rivera. Pack your things and get out of this building right now. The words hung in the air like smoke. Everyone stood very still and quiet. Marcus felt like time had stopped. After 2 years of hard work, after all the late nights and early mornings, after keeping this building spotless every single day, he was being fired for taking care of his sick daughter. You're firing me? Marcus asked quietly. Yes, I'm firing you. Effective immediately. Clean out your locker and leave your uniform and keys with security. I don't want to see you in this building again. Marcus looked around at all the people watching. He saw sympathy in their faces and anger too. They knew this was wrong. They knew Marcus was a good worker and a good man. But they also knew they couldn't help him without risking their own jobs. All right, Marcus said finally. I'll clean out my locker. He walked slowly to his locker, aware that everyone was still watching. His hands were steady as he opened the lock and began taking out his personal belongings. He was careful not to look at the briefcase and business cards on the top shelf. Those would stay hidden for now. Janet stood watching with her arms crossed, making sure he didn't take anything that belonged to the company. The other employees began to slowly walk away, but Marcus could tell they felt bad about what had just happened. As Marcus folded his regular clothes and put them in a plastic bag, he thought about Sophia. How would he tell her that Daddy had lost his job? How would he pay for her medicine? How would he pay rent next month? But even with all these worries, Marcus didn't regret staying with Sophia at the hospital. A child needed her parent when she was scared and sick. No job was more important than that. Hurry up, Janet said impatiently. I don't have all day. Marcus finished packing his things and closed the locker. He took off his name tag and his building key and handed them to Janet. There, he said. I'm done. Janet took the keys and name tag without saying thank you or goodbye. She just turned and walked away, her high heels clicking on the concrete floor until she disappeared around a corner. Marcus stood alone in the basement, holding his plastic bag of belongings. 2 years of his life had just ended in 20 minutes of shouting and humiliation, but he held his head high as he walked to the elevator. He had done nothing wrong except love his daughter. What Marcus didn't know was that his real life was about to begin. Marcus sat in his old Honda in the parking lot of Sterling Industries, staring at the plastic bag of his belongings on the passenger seat. The car had finally started this morning, but now it didn't matter. He had nowhere to go. For the first time in 2 years, he wasn't rushing to get to work. He pulled out his phone to call Mrs. Garcia and tell her he would be home early today. As he dialed her number, his mind went back to a time when his life was very different. A time when he wore expensive suits instead of janitor uniforms, when he carried that leather briefcase instead of a mop bucket. 3 years ago, Marcus Rivera had been a different man living a different life. Back then, Marcus worked for Thompson Global Industries, one of the biggest companies in the country. He was a vice president in charge of operations, making more money in a year than most people made in 5 years. He had a corner office on the 40th floor with windows that looked out over the whole city. People called him Mr. Rivera and asked for his opinion on important business decisions. Marcus had worked hard to get to that position. He had grown up poor, the son of a janitor and a house cleaner who came to America from Mexico when he was just a baby. His parents worked 2 jobs each just to pay rent on their small apartment. But they always told Marcus that education was the key to a better life. Marcus studied hard in school and got excellent grades. He was the first person in his family to go to college. He went to state school on scholarships and worked nights in a restaurant to pay for books and food. After college, he went to Harvard Business School, one of the best business schools in the world. At Harvard, Marcus learned about finance, management, and leadership. He also learned that being smart wasn't enough. You had to work harder than everyone else and never give up, even when things got difficult. Marcus graduated at the top of his class and got job offers from several big companies. He chose Thompson Global Industries because they said they wanted someone who understood what it was like to work hard for everything. Marcus started in a small position, but he was promoted quickly because he was smart, worked hard, and treated everyone with respect. When Marcus was 28 years old, he married Elena Gutierrez, a beautiful teacher who worked at an elementary school. Elena was kind, funny, and loved children. She made Marcus laugh even when he had stressful days at work. They bought a nice house in the suburbs and talked about having children someday. 2 years later, Sophia was born. She was the most beautiful baby Marcus had ever seen, with dark hair like her father and bright eyes like her mother. Marcus would hurry home from work every day just to hold Sophia and help Elena take care of her. Elena was a wonderful mother. She sang Spanish lullabies to Sophia and taught her to count in both English and Spanish. She made homemade baby food and read books about child development. Marcus would sometimes find Elena asleep in the rocking chair with Sophia in her arms, both of them peaceful and content. Life was good for the Rivera family. Marcus was successful at work. Elena loved teaching, and Sophia was growing into a smart, happy little girl. They had money saved in the bank, good health insurance, and plans for the future. Marcus was even thinking about starting his own business someday. But then everything changed in one terrible night. Elena was driving home from a parent-teacher conference at her school when it happened. It was raining hard and the roads were slippery. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit Elena's car on the driver's side. The impact was so hard that Elena's car flipped over twice before hitting a tree. Marcus got the phone call at 11:30 at night. He had been waiting up for Elena to get home, wondering why she was so late. When the phone rang, he thought it might be Elena calling to say she was stuck in traffic. Instead, it was a police officer telling him there had been an accident. Marcus's world stopped. He called Mrs. Garcia to come stay with Sophia, and then he drove to the hospital as fast as he could. Elena was in a coma. The doctors said she had serious injuries to her brain, and that they weren't sure if she would wake up. Marcus sat by her bed for 3 days, holding her hand and talking to her. He told her about Sophia's new words and how much they both missed her. He begged her to wake up. On the 4th day, Elena opened her eyes. Marcus cried with relief and called all their family and friends, but his happiness didn't last long. The doctors explained that Elena had suffered serious brain damage. She couldn't speak clearly, couldn't walk, and couldn't remember many things. She would need constant medical care for the rest of her life. Marcus took time off work to take care of Elena and Sophia. He hired nurses to help during the day, but he wanted to be with Elena as much as possible. The medical bills were enormous, even with good insurance. The special equipment Elena needed, the medicines, the physical therapy, it all cost more money than Marcus had ever imagined. For 6 months, Marcus tried to balance everything. He would work during the day, then rush to the hospital to be with Elena. At night, he would take care of Sophia, who was confused and sad about why Mommy couldn't come home. Marcus was exhausted and worried all the time, but he never gave up hope that Elena would get better. Then Elena got an infection in her lungs. Her body was too weak to fight it. She died on a Tuesday morning in March with Marcus holding her hand and telling her how much he loved her. Marcus felt like his heart had been torn out of his chest. Elena had been his best friend, his partner, his reason for working so hard. Now she was gone, and he was alone with a 3-year-old daughter who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. The medical bills didn't stop when Elena died. Marcus owed the hospital over $200,000 even after insurance. He had to sell their house to pay some of the debt. He sold Elena's car and most of their furniture, but it still wasn't enough. Marcus's company was understanding at first, but after 6 months of missed meetings and incomplete projects, they told him he needed to decide between his job and his personal problems. Marcus chose Sophia. He quit his job and sold almost everything he owned to pay Elena's medical bills. For a year, Marcus and Sophia lived with Elena's mother in a small apartment. Marcus applied for jobs, but it was hard to explain the gap in his work history. Companies wanted to know why a successful executive had quit his job and disappeared for a year. Marcus was honest about Elena's illness and death, but many employers worried that he wouldn't be reliable because of his personal problems. Finally, Marcus realized he needed to try a different approach. He and Sophia moved to a small apartment across town, and Marcus started looking for jobs that offered good health insurance and flexible hours. He needed to be available for Sophia when she was sick or scared. He needed a job that wouldn't judge him for putting his daughter first. That's when he saw the job posting for a janitor at Sterling Industries. The pay wasn't much, but the health insurance was excellent, and the hours were perfect. Marcus could work at night while Sophia slept and be home during the day to take care of her. Marcus knew he was overqualified for the job, but he also knew it was exactly what he needed. So he left his MBA and business experience off his application. He just said he was a hard worker who needed steady employment with good benefits. He got the job immediately. For 2 years, Marcus had been living a double life. During the day, he was a single father who cooked breakfast for Sophia, helped her with homework, and read her bedtime stories. At night, he was a janitor who cleaned offices and emptied trash cans. But Marcus had also been doing something else during those 2 years. He had been going to night school, working on finishing his business degree that had been interrupted by Elena's illness. And he had been watching Sterling Industries, learning how the company worked, studying their problems and opportunities. Marcus never planned to be a janitor forever. He was just waiting for the right opportunity to use his real skills again. He wanted to be ready when that opportunity came. As Marcus sat in his car in the Sterling Industries parking lot, looking at the plastic bag of his belongings, he thought about Elena. What would she want him to do now? She would want him to take care of Sophia, of course, but she would also want him to not give up on his dreams. Marcus reached into the back seat and pulled out the leather briefcase he had hidden there this morning. He opened it and looked at the business cards inside. Marcus Rivera, MBA, Harvard Business School. Maybe it was time to stop hiding who he really was. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sophia. "I feel better today, Daddy. Mrs. Garcia made me soup. I love you." Marcus smiled for the first time all day. Whatever happened next, he and Sophia would face it together, just like they always had. While Marcus was sitting in his car in the parking lot, holding his plastic bag of belongings, something very important was happening on the 20th floor of Sterling Industries. In a large conference room with windows that looked out over the city, 12 people in expensive suits were having an emergency meeting. These people were the board of directors of Sterling Industries. They were the ones who made the biggest decisions about the company. Today they were nervous and excited at the same time, because everything was about to change. 6 months ago, Sterling Industries had been bought by a much larger company called Global Dynamics Corporation. Global Dynamics owned businesses all over the world, and they were known for buying smaller companies and making them more successful. But they were also known for making big changes and replacing the people in charge. The current CEO of Sterling Industries, Robert Hamilton, was a thin man with gray hair who had been running the company for 15 years. He was sitting at the head of the long conference table looking worried. He knew that today might be his last day as CEO. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Margaret Chen, the chairwoman of the board, "as you all know, Global Dynamics has chosen a new CEO for Sterling Industries. Mr. Hamilton has done good work for many years, but Global Dynamics wants fresh leadership to take us into the future." Robert Hamilton nodded sadly. He had known this day was coming, but it still hurt to hear the words out loud. He had given 15 years of his life to Sterling Industries, but business was business. "Who is the new CEO?" asked David Rodriguez, the head of sales. "Do we know anything about them?" Margaret Chen looked down at her papers. "That's the interesting thing. Global Dynamics has been very secretive about their choice. All we know is that the new CEO has an MBA from Harvard Business School and has specific experience in operations management. They're supposed to arrive today to begin the transition." "Today?" said Jennifer Walsh, the head of marketing and Janet Walsh's older sister. "Don't you think we should have more notice?" "Global Dynamics does things their own way," Margaret Chen replied. "They believe in quick transitions and immediate changes. The new CEO wants to meet with department heads this afternoon to discuss the future direction of the company." Around the table, the department heads looked at each other nervously. When big companies brought in new CEOs, it usually meant some people would lose their jobs. Everyone was wondering if they would still have work tomorrow. "What about employee evaluations?" asked Patricia Moore, the head of human resources. "Should we prepare reports on all our staff?" "Actually, that's an interesting point," Margaret Chen said. "The new CEO specifically requested that we not prepare any reports ahead of time. They want to observe the company and make their own judgments about how things work." This was very unusual. Most new CEOs wanted to see charts and reports about everything before they made any decisions, but Global Dynamics had a reputation for doing things differently. "I heard they're planning to implement some kind of employee feedback system," said Thomas Liu, the head of finance. "Something about getting opinions from workers at all levels, not just management." "That's right," Margaret Chen confirmed. "The new CEO believes that the best ideas often come from the people who do the actual work, not just the people who manage the work." Janet Walsh, who had been promoted to head of facilities management just last month, smiled confidently. She had been working hard to impress the board of directors, and she thought this was her chance to show how well she could manage people. "I think that's a great idea," Janet said. "I've been implementing new efficiency standards in facilities management. Just this morning I had to terminate an employee who consistently violated our punctuality policies. I believe in maintaining high standards." Several people around the table looked uncomfortable. They had heard that Janet could be harsh with employees, but they didn't want to say anything that might cause problems. "What kind of background does the new CEO have?" asked Robert Hamilton. Even though he was being replaced, he still cared about Sterling Industries and wanted to make sure the company would be in good hands. Margaret Chen shuffled through her papers again. "As I mentioned, they have an MBA from Harvard and experience in operations. But Global Dynamics was very vague about the details. They said the new CEO has unique insights into operational efficiency and employee relations, whatever that means. It sounds like they might have worked their way up from a lower position," suggested David Rodriguez. "Maybe they started in operations before moving into management." "That would be refreshing," said Patricia Moore. Most CEOs come from finance or sales. It would be nice to have someone who understands the actual work that gets done in a company. Or it could be a disaster, muttered Jennifer Walsh under her breath. What if they don't understand the big picture? Margaret Chen looked at her watch. The new CEO should be arriving any minute now. Global Dynamics sent a car to pick them up from the airport this morning. I suggest we all prepare for some significant changes in how we do business. What should we tell our employees? Asked Thomas Liu. People are already nervous about the merger. If they hear we're getting a new CEO today, they might panic. Let's wait and see what the new CEO wants to do, Margaret Chen replied. They might want to address all employees directly. Global Dynamics mentioned something about transparency and open communication being important to the new leadership. Janet Walsh was already planning her presentation for the new CEO. She would talk about the efficiency improvements she had made, the money she had saved by enforcing strict policies, and the high standards she maintained. She was sure the new CEO would be impressed by her tough management style. I think we should emphasize our commitment to discipline and accountability, Janet said. Employees need to understand that there are consequences for not following company policies. Like the janitor I fired this morning. He was chronically late, and I made sure he understood that Sterling Industries has standards. Some of the other department heads looked at each other with concern. They had heard that Marcus Rivera was a good worker who had some personal challenges, but they hadn't said anything because Janet was management. Maybe we should focus on positive improvements rather than punishments, suggested Patricia Moore carefully. The new CEO might be interested in employee retention and job satisfaction. Job satisfaction is important, Janet agreed, but so is accountability. Employees need to know that actions have consequences. Margaret Chen's assistant knocked on the conference room door and entered quietly. Ms. Chen, the assistant said, I just got a call from Global Dynamics. There's been some kind of delay with the new CEO's arrival. They said to expect them sometime this afternoon, but they couldn't give an exact time. Thank you, Linda, Margaret Chen said. Please let us know as soon as they arrive. After the assistant left, the board members continued discussing what the new leadership might mean for Sterling Industries. They talked about possible changes to company policies, new technology systems, and different ways of organizing their departments. What none of them knew was that their new CEO was already in the building. He had been in the building for 2 years, in fact. He had been watching them, learning about their strengths and weaknesses, understanding exactly how Sterling Industries really worked. Marcus Rivera had observed every department during his night shifts. He had seen which managers stayed late to help their employees finish important projects. He had seen which departments wasted money on unnecessary supplies. He had noticed which workers were dedicated and which ones just did the minimum required. He had also seen how Janet Walsh treated people when she thought no one important was watching. He had heard her yell at cleaning staff, security guards, and maintenance workers. He had seen her take credit for other people's work and blame others for her own mistakes. But Marcus had also seen the good things about Sterling Industries. He had met employees who really cared about their work and wanted the company to succeed. He had seen the potential for making the company better by treating people with respect and giving them opportunities to contribute their ideas. As the board meeting continued on the 20th floor, Marcus was still sitting in his car in the parking lot, thinking about his next move. He looked at his phone and saw that it was almost noon. He needed to pick up Sophia from Mrs. Garcia's house and figure out what to do next. What Marcus didn't know was that in about 2 hours, his phone would ring with a call that would change everything. The double life he had been living for 2 years was about to end, and his real life was about to begin. But first he had to go home and hug his daughter. Marcus drove slowly through the city streets toward Mrs. Garcia's house to pick up Sophia. His mind was spinning with worry about money, about finding a new job, about how he would explain to Sophia that everything was changing again. The radio was playing soft music, but Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy thinking about what to do next. He pulled into the driveway of Mrs. Garcia's small house and sat in the car for a moment, trying to put on a brave face for Sophia. Mrs. Garcia was a kind woman in her 60s who had been Elena's neighbor when they lived in their old house. When Elena died, Mrs. Garcia had offered to help take care of Sophia, and she had become like a grandmother to the little girl. Marcus knocked on the front door, and Mrs. Garcia opened it with a worried expression on her face. "Marcus, you're early today. Is everything all right?" "I lost my job this morning," Marcus said quietly so Sophia wouldn't hear. "I'll tell you more later, but I need to take Sophia home now." Mrs. Garcia's face filled with concern. She had watched Marcus struggle for 2 years, working hard to take care of Sophia and build a new life after Elena's death. She knew how much that job meant to him. "Daddy." Sophia came running to the door, her face bright with excitement. She looked much better than she had the night before. Her fever was gone and her eyes were clear and happy. "Hello, my little princess," Marcus said, kneeling down to hug her. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better. Mrs. Garcia made me soup and we watched cartoons. And look." Sophia held up a drawing she had made with colored pencils. It was a picture of a man in a suit standing next to a little girl. "I drew you as a businessman, like in the pictures Mama used to show me." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Sophia still remembered the old photos of him in his business suits from before Elena got sick, but she didn't really understand what that meant. "That's a beautiful picture, sweetheart. Are you ready to go home?" "Yes. Mrs. Garcia said we could make cookies tonight if you want to." Marcus looked at Mrs. Garcia gratefully. She was always trying to make Sophia happy even when things were difficult. "We'll see about the cookies," Marcus said. "Right now, Daddy needs to make some phone calls." As they drove home to their small apartment, Sophia chattered about her morning with Mrs. Garcia and how much better she felt. Marcus listened and smiled, but inside he was calculating how much money they had in the bank and how long it would last without his job. Their apartment was on the second floor of an old building, but it was clean and comfortable. Marcus had worked hard to make it feel like a real home for Sophia. Her bedroom was painted pink, her favorite color, and filled with books and toys. The living room had a couch where they read stories together every night. "Can I watch cartoons while you make your phone calls?" Sophia asked as they walked up the stairs. "Of course, sweetheart. But first, let me check if we have any messages." Marcus looked at his phone and saw that he had 3 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. There was also a voicemail message. He helped Sophia get settled on the couch with her cartoons, then went into the kitchen to listen to the message. "Mr. Rivera, this is Catherine Walsh from Global Dynamics Corporation Human Resources. We've been trying to reach you regarding your position as Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Industries. Your start date is today, and we need to confirm your arrival time. Please call me back immediately at 555-0147. Marcus stared at his phone in confusion. There had to be some mistake. Chief Executive Officer? Sterling Industries. That was impossible. He was a janitor who had just been fired this morning, but as Marcus thought about it, something began to make sense. 6 months ago, he had submitted an application for executive positions at Global Dynamics Corporation. It was something he had done on a whim, not really expecting anything to come of it. He had used his real background, his Harvard MBA, his experience at Thomson Global Industries, his knowledge of operations management, but he had completely forgotten about it. So much had happened in the past 6 months with Sophia's health problems and his struggles at work that the application had slipped his mind entirely. Marcus called the number from the voicemail with shaking hands. Global Dynamics Human Resources. This is Catherine Walsh. This is Marcus Rivera. I got a message about a CEO position. Mr. Rivera, thank you for calling back. We've been trying to reach you all morning. Your first day as Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Industries is today. Are you experiencing any difficulties getting to the office? Marcus felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. I think there might be some confusion. I work as a janitor at Sterling Industries. There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. Mr. Rivera, according to our records, you were selected for the CEO position based on your Harvard MBA, your operational experience at Thomson Global Industries, and your comprehensive application essay about employee relations and operational efficiency. You went through a full background check and interview process 6 months ago. Marcus remembered now. He had done a phone interview with someone from Global Dynamics, but it had been so long ago that he had assumed nothing came of it. He had been so focused on surviving day by day that he had forgotten about applying for bigger opportunities. The Sterling Industries Board of Directors is waiting to meet with you this afternoon, Catherine continued. Mr. Rivera, are you still interested in the position? Marcus looked through the kitchen doorway at Sophia, who was laughing at something on television. He thought about Janet Walsh and how she had humiliated him in front of everyone this morning. He thought about all the nights he had cleaned those offices, watching and learning how the company really worked. "Can you give me the details again?" Marcus asked. "You'll be replacing Robert Hamilton as CEO of Sterling Industries effective immediately. Your starting salary is $350,000 per year, plus bonuses based on company performance. You'll have full benefits, including executive health insurance and a company car. Global Dynamics chose you specifically because of your unique combination of operational experience and employee relations expertise." Marcus sat down hard in a kitchen chair.
$350,000 a year.
That was more money than he had made even at his old job at Thompson Global Industries. It was enough to give Sophia everything she needed and more. "Mr. Rivera, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here. This is very unexpected. I understand it's a big change, but Global Dynamics has great confidence in your abilities. Your application essay about the importance of understanding a business from the ground up was particularly impressive. You wrote about how the best leaders are those who have done the actual work, not just managed it from a distance." Marcus remembered writing that essay late one night after a particularly difficult shift cleaning the executive offices. He had been frustrated watching managers make decisions without understanding how they affected the real workers. "There's just one thing," Marcus said. "I was actually fired from my janitor position this morning. The building manager, Janet Walsh, terminated me for being late." Catherine Walsh was quiet for a moment. "Janet Walsh is the facilities manager? She'll be reporting to you as CEO." The irony of the situation hit Marcus like a truck. Janet Walsh, who had just fired him and humiliated him in front of other employees, was going to be working for him. The woman who had called him unreliable and lazy was going to have to answer to him. "Mr. Rivera, would you be able to come to Sterling Industries this afternoon? I can send a car to pick you up, or if you prefer, you can drive yourself. The board of directors is very eager to meet with you and begin the transition." Marcus looked at Sophia again. She was healthy and happy, completely unaware that their lives were about to change completely. Again. "I'll drive myself," Marcus said. "What time should I be there?" "Could you be there by 2 p.m.? I'll let the board know you're coming. And Mr. Rivera, congratulations. Global Dynamics is very excited about the future of Sterling Industries under your leadership." After Marcus hung up the phone, he sat in his kitchen chair for a long time, staring at the wall. This morning he had been a fired janitor with no prospects and a sick daughter. Now he was the CEO of Sterling Industries, the company that had employed him for 2 years without knowing who he really was. He thought about Elena and what she would say if she were here. She would probably laugh and say that life has a sense of humor. She would tell him that everything happens for a reason, and that sometimes you have to go through difficult times to get to better ones. "Daddy?" Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway.
Are you okay?
"You look funny." Marcus smiled and picked up his daughter, spinning her around until she giggled. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. Daddy just got some very good news." "What kind of good news?" "The kind that means we're going to be just fine." Marcus set Sophia down and looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. It was 12:30 p.m. In an hour and a half he would walk back into Sterling Industries. But this time he wouldn't be carrying a mop bucket. This time he would be carrying the keys to the entire company. At exactly 2 p.m., Marcus Rivera walked through the front doors of Sterling Industries for the second time that day. But this time everything was different. This time he was wearing a navy blue business suit, a crisp white shirt, and a red tie. He carried his leather briefcase and walked with the confident stride of a man who belonged in the executive world. Tony, the security guard, looked up from his desk and did a double take. For a moment he didn't recognize the well-dressed businessman walking toward him. "Marcus, is that you?" Marcus smiled and stopped at Tony's desk. "Hello, Tony. Yes, it's me. But you look so different. And didn't Janet Walsh fire you this morning? What are you doing back here?" "It's a long story," Marcus said kindly. "I'll explain everything later. Right now I need to get to the 20th floor for a meeting." Tony looked confused but handed Marcus a visitor's badge. "Okay, my friend. But be careful. If Janet sees you, there might be trouble." "I think I can handle Janet Walsh," Marcus said with a small smile. Marcus took the elevator to the 20th floor, where the executive offices were located. He had cleaned these offices many times during his night shifts, but he had never been here during business hours. The hallways were busy with people in suits hurrying to meetings and talking on phones. He found the large conference room where the board of directors was waiting. Through the glass doors, he could see 12 people sitting around a long table. They all looked important and serious, wearing expensive clothes and checking their phones. Marcus took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Come in," said a woman's voice. Marcus opened the door and stepped inside. The conversation around the table stopped immediately as everyone looked at him. They had been expecting an important new CEO, but all they saw was a young man who looked like he might be someone's assistant. "Excuse me," said Margaret Chen, the chairwoman of the board. "We're waiting for an important meeting. Are you here to deliver something?" "Actually," Marcus said calmly, "I'm here for the meeting. I'm Marcus Rivera, your new CEO." The silence in the room was so complete that Marcus could hear the air conditioning humming. 12 pairs of eyes stared at him in shock. This young man couldn't possibly be their new CEO. He looked too young, too normal. "I'm sorry," said Robert Hamilton, the outgoing CEO. "There must be some mistake. We're expecting someone from Global Dynamics." Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder of papers. "I have my appointment letter right here, signed by the president of Global Dynamics Corporation. I also have my contract and identification." Margaret Chen took the papers and read them carefully. Her eyes grew wider with each page. "This appears to be genuine," she said slowly. "But Mr. Rivera, you look so young. And your background check says you have operational experience, but we were expecting someone more senior." "I understand your surprise," Marcus said. "I know I'm not what you were expecting, but I assure you that I'm qualified for this position." Before anyone could respond, there was a commotion outside the conference room. Through the glass doors, they could see Janet Walsh walking quickly down the hallway, carrying a stack of papers and talking loudly to someone on her phone. "I need to finish this report for the new CEO," Janet was saying. "I want to make sure they understand how efficiently I run facilities management. Just this morning, I had to fire a troublesome employee who had no respect for company policies." Janet ended her phone call and opened the conference room door without knocking. She was so focused on making a good impression that she didn't look at the people around the table. "I'm sorry I'm late," Janet announced loudly. "I was just finishing my efficiency report for the new CEO. I wanted to make sure they understand that I maintain the highest standards in facilities management." She looked up and saw Marcus standing at the head of the table in his business suit. For a moment, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. It was like seeing a ghost. "What?" Janet's voice came out as a whisper. "What is he doing here?" "Ms. Walsh," Margaret Chen said carefully, "I'd like you to meet Marcus Rivera, our new Chief Executive Officer." Janet's face went completely white. Then it turned red. Then it went white again. She looked like she might faint. "That's impossible," Janet said, her voice getting louder. "That's Marcus Rivera. He's a janitor. I fired him this morning for being chronically late." The other board members looked at each other in confusion. Some of them had heard rumors about Janet's harsh treatment of employees, but they had never seen it directly. "Security," Janet shouted, even though no security guards were in the room. "This man was terminated this morning. He has no right to be in this building." Marcus remained calm and professional. He had expected this reaction from Janet, and he was prepared for it. "Ms. Walsh," Marcus said quietly, "please sit down. We need to have a conversation." "I will not sit down." Janet's voice was so loud that people in nearby offices could hear her through the walls. "This is ridiculous. This man is a janitor. He empties trash cans and mops floors. He can't be a CEO." Margaret Chen stood up and spoke firmly. "Ms. Walsh, please control yourself. Mr. Rivera has provided proper documentation of his appointment. Whether you understand it or not, he is our new CEO." Janet looked around the room at the board members, hoping someone would support her. But they were all staring at her with disapproval. Even her sister Jennifer was shaking her head with embarrassment. "This has to be some kind of joke," Janet said, but her voice was weaker now. "Or a mistake. A huge mistake." Marcus opened his briefcase again and pulled out his business cards. He handed one to Janet with a steady hand. "Marcus Rivera, MBA, Harvard Business School," Janet read out loud. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Ms. Walsh," Marcus said gently, "I have indeed been working as a janitor at Sterling Industries for the past 2 years, but that was not my only qualification. I took that job because I needed flexible hours to take care of my daughter after my wife died. The janitorial position allowed me to observe this company from a unique perspective." The room was completely silent. Everyone was trying to understand how the quiet janitor they had barely noticed had become their new boss. During my time cleaning the offices, Marcus continued, I learned how this company really works. I saw which departments are efficient and which ones waste resources. I observed which managers treat employees with respect and which ones create hostile work environments. Janet's hands were shaking now. She suddenly realized that Marcus had been watching her behavior for 2 years. He had seen how she treated the cleaning staff, the security guards, and the maintenance workers. He had witnessed her yelling, her disrespect, her bullying. I also observed, Marcus said, looking directly at Janet, how some managers treat employees when they think no one important is watching. Janet sat down heavily in a chair, finally understanding the full magnitude of her situation. The man she had humiliated and fired this morning was now her boss. The janitor she had called lazy and unreliable was now the most powerful person in the company. Mr. Rivera, said David Rodriguez, the head of sales, this is quite extraordinary. How long have you known about your appointment as CEO? I found out about 2 hours ago, Marcus replied. I had applied for the position 6 months ago but had forgotten about it. When Global Dynamics called this afternoon, I was sitting in my car in your parking lot having just been fired by Ms. Walsh. Several board members looked at Janet with disapproval. Patricia Moore, the head of human resources, was taking notes furiously. She knew there would be consequences for Janet's behavior. Ms. Walsh, Marcus said, his voice still calm and professional, I want you to know that I don't make decisions based on personal feelings. Your employment status will be determined by your professional performance, not by what happened this morning. Janet looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. She knew she had made a terrible mistake and she was terrified of losing her job. However, Marcus continued, your behavior this morning displayed exactly the kind of management style that Global Dynamics wants to change at Sterling Industries. We believe in treating all employees with dignity and respect, regardless of their position. Marcus looked around the room at all the board members. That brings me to my first executive decision, he said. Effective immediately, Sterling Industries will implement a comprehensive employee relations review. We will examine how managers at all levels treat their subordinates, and we will make changes where necessary. Margaret Chen nodded approvingly. That sounds like an excellent policy, Mr. Rivera. I also want to meet with employees at all levels, Marcus continued, not just management. I believe the best ideas often come from the people who do the actual work. Janet Walsh sat in her chair, knowing that her career at Sterling Industries would never be the same. The janitor she had dismissed and insulted was now in charge of everything, and he was already making it clear that the old ways of doing business were over. Marcus Rivera, the former janitor, was now running the company. And everyone in that room knew that Sterling Industries would never be the same again. After Janet Walsh's outburst, the conference room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The board members were still trying to process what had just happened. Their new CEO was the janitor they had barely noticed for 2 years, and their facilities manager had just publicly humiliated herself by screaming at him. Marcus remained standing at the head of the table, looking calm and professional despite everything that had just occurred. He understood that these people needed an explanation, and he was prepared to give them one. I know this situation is confusing for everyone, Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. Please let me explain how we got here. Margaret Chen gestured for him to continue. Please, Mr. Rivera, we're all very interested to understand. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. 2.5 years ago, I was a vice president at Thomson Global Industries. I had an MBA from Harvard Business School and was considered a rising star in the corporate world. My wife Elena and I had a comfortable life with our young daughter Sophia. He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The painful memories were still difficult to share, even after all this time. Then Elena was hit by a drunk driver. She spent 6 months in a coma before she died, leaving me with massive medical bills and a 3-year-old daughter who needed her father more than ever. The room was completely quiet now. Even Janet Walsh had stopped sniffling and was listening intently. I lost everything, Marcus continued. Our house, our savings, my career. I had to choose between keeping my high-paying job and taking care of Sophia. I chose Sophia. Patricia Moore, the head of human resources, nodded with understanding. She was a mother herself and could imagine how difficult that choice must have been. For a year, I tried to find another executive position, but employers were concerned about the gap in my work history. They worried that my personal problems would interfere with my work, so I realized I needed to try a different approach. Marcus walked slowly around the conference table as he spoke, making eye contact with each board member. I needed a job with excellent health insurance for Sophia, flexible hours so I could be available when she was sick, and stable employment that wouldn't judge me for putting my daughter first. The janitorial position at Sterling Industries offered all of those things. But you were overqualified, said Thomas Liu, the head of finance. Didn't that bother you? Pride doesn't pay medical bills, Marcus replied simply. And I knew the position was temporary. I was already planning my return to the business world. I just needed time to rebuild. Marcus pulled out several sheets of paper from his folder. During my time here, I've been going to night school to complete additional business coursework. I've also been studying Sterling Industries from a perspective that no other executive could have. He handed copies of the papers to Margaret Chen. These are detailed reports I've written about operational efficiency, employee morale, and cost-saving opportunities, all based on observations I made during my night shifts. Margaret Chen read the first page and her eyebrows raised in surprise. This is incredibly detailed analysis. You've identified problems that our management consultants missed. When you empty trash cans in the accounting department every night for 2 years, Marcus said with a small smile, you notice patterns. You see which projects get thrown away half-finished because of poor communication. You observe which employees stay late to fix other people's mistakes. David Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. What kind of things did you observe? Marcus pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. I observed that the marketing department orders twice as many supplies as they actually use because they're afraid of running out. I noticed that the IT department gets calls for the same technical problems every week because they fix symptoms instead of root causes. I saw that employee turnover is highest in departments where managers don't treat people with respect. The board members looked at each other with amazement. This kind of detailed operational knowledge usually took years for executives to acquire, and even then they rarely understood the day-to-day realities of their companies. I also observed, Marcus continued, looking directly at Janet Walsh, that some managers create unnecessary stress and inefficiency by treating employees like enemies instead of assets. Janet's face turned red again, but this time she remained silent. For example, Marcus said, pulling out a specific report, facilities management has a 40% higher turnover rate than any other department. Exit interviews consistently mention management style as the primary reason for leaving. The cost of constantly hiring and training new employees is approximately $180,000 per year in that department alone. Patricia Moore was writing notes furiously. This was exactly the kind of data she needed to make changes in the company's human resources policies. Global Dynamics chose me for this position, Marcus explained, because they wanted someone with both traditional business education and practical operational experience. They specifically said they were looking for a leader who understood the importance of employee relations and ground-level efficiency. Margaret Chen looked impressed. And you gained that understanding by actually doing the work yourself. Exactly. I've mopped these floors, emptied these trash cans, and cleaned these offices. I've talked to security guards, maintenance workers, and night shift employees. I understand how decisions made in this conference room affect the people who actually keep this company running. Robert Hamilton, the outgoing CEO, spoke for the first time since Marcus had arrived. That's remarkable insight. In my 15 years as CEO, I never really understood what happened in this building after business hours. Most executives don't, Marcus agreed, and that's not necessarily their fault. The traditional path to corporate leadership doesn't usually include working night shifts in the basement. But I believe that experience gives me a unique perspective on how to make Sterling Industries more successful. Thomas Liu raised his hand slightly. What specific changes are you planning to implement? Marcus opened another folder. First, we're going to restructure our communication systems so that good ideas can flow upward from any level of the organization. Too often, the people closest to problems have the best solutions, but no one asks for their input. He pulled out a detailed organizational chart. Second, we're going to invest in employee development and training. Our people are our most valuable asset, and we should treat them that way. That means better benefits, more opportunities for advancement, and managers who are trained in respectful leadership. Janet Walsh shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She was beginning to understand that her management style was not just personally humiliating, but also bad for business. Third, Marcus continued, we're going to implement efficiency improvements based on actual observation rather than theoretical models. I've identified at least 12 areas where we can save money without cutting jobs or reducing quality. Margaret Chen was nodding approvingly. This all sounds very promising, Mr. Rivera. Finally, Marcus said, we're going to create a culture where every employee feels valued and respected, regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. A janitor who takes pride in keeping the building clean is just as important as an executive who makes strategic decisions. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each board member. I learned something important during my time as a janitor, Marcus said. I learned that there's dignity in every kind of honest work. I also learned that how you treat people says more about your character than your job title does. The room was completely silent for a long moment. Then Margaret Chen began to clap slowly. Soon, all the board members except Janet Walsh were applauding. Mr. Rivera, Margaret Chen said, I think Sterling Industries is very fortunate to have you as our new CEO. Thank you, Marcus replied, but I want everyone to understand that I'm not here for revenge or to settle personal scores. What happened this morning with Ms. Walsh was unfortunate, but my decisions will be based on what's best for the company and all its employees. Janet Walsh finally found her voice. Mr. Rivera, she said quietly, I owe you an apology. My behavior this morning was completely unprofessional and inexcusable. Marcus nodded. Apology accepted, Ms. Walsh. Now let's focus on moving forward constructively. What does this mean for my position? Janet asked nervously. That depends, Marcus replied, on whether you're willing to learn new approaches to management and employee relations. Sterling Industries needs strong leaders at every level, but they need to be leaders who inspire rather than intimidate. Marcus closed his folders and looked around the table one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about the future of Sterling Industries. We have talented people, good products, and tremendous potential. With the right leadership and the right culture, there's no limit to what we can accomplish. As the meeting ended and the board members filed out of the conference room, Marcus remained behind with his thoughts. In one day, he had gone from being a fired janitor to the CEO of a major corporation. But the most important thing hadn't changed. He was still Sophia's father, and everything he did was still for her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But tonight, 6 months had passed since that incredible day when Marcus Rivera went from fired janitor to CEO of Sterling Industries. As he sat in his corner office on the 20th floor, looking out at the city where he had once struggled to make ends meet, Marcus could hardly believe how much everything had changed. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. There had been difficult conversations, hard decisions, and moments when Marcus wondered if he was really ready for such a big responsibility. But with each passing week, Sterling Industries had become stronger, more efficient, and more profitable than ever before. Marcus's first major decision as CEO had been to implement what he called the open door policy. Any employee, from any level of the company, could schedule a meeting with him to discuss ideas, problems, or suggestions. In the first month alone, he had met with janitors, security guards, secretaries, accountants, and managers. The results had been amazing. A security guard named Tony had suggested a new system for managing visitor access that saved the company $50,000 a year. A secretary in accounting had identified a billing error that was costing clients money and damaging relationships. A maintenance worker had proposed an energy-saving plan that reduced the building's electricity costs by 30%. The best ideas really do come from the people who do the actual work. Marcus had told the board of directors, "We just have to be smart enough to listen." Marcus had also kept his promise to review employee relations throughout the company. With the help of Patricia Moore from Human Resources, they had implemented new training programs for all managers. The focus was on respectful leadership, effective communication, and creating positive work environments. Janet Walsh had been one of the biggest challenges. After her humiliating outburst on Marcus's first day, she had expected to be fired immediately. Instead, Marcus had offered her a choice. She could participate in an intensive management training program and learn new ways of leading people, or she could look for work elsewhere. To everyone's surprise, Janet had chosen the training program. It hadn't been easy for her to admit that her management style was wrong, but she was determined to keep her job and prove that she could change. The transformation in Janet had been remarkable. She had learned to listen before speaking, to offer solutions instead of just pointing out problems, and to treat all employees with respect regardless of their position. She was now running employee orientation programs, teaching new managers about the importance of workplace dignity. "I spent years thinking that being tough meant being mean," Janet had told Marcus during one of their weekly check-in meetings. "You taught me that real strength comes from lifting people up, not tearing them down." Marcus had also made changes to employee benefits and career development opportunities. Sterling Industries now offered tuition assistance for employees who wanted to go back to school, flexible work schedules for parents with young children, and clear paths for advancement based on merit rather than politics. The company's financial performance had improved dramatically. In 6 months, Sterling Industries had become the most profitable subsidiary in Global Dynamics Corporation's portfolio. Employee turnover had dropped to the lowest levels in company history, and customer satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. But the change Marcus was most proud of was in the company culture. Sterling Industries had become a place where people genuinely wanted to work, where employees felt valued and respected, and where everyone understood that their contribution mattered. On this particular Friday afternoon, Marcus was preparing to leave the office early. He had started a new tradition of picking up Sophia from school himself every Friday, something he had never been able to do when he was working night shifts as a janitor. His assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Rivera, there's someone here to see you." "Send them in," Marcus said, expecting it to be one of his managers with an end-of-week report. Instead, Tony, the security guard, walked into his office, looking nervous and excited at the same time. "Tony!" Marcus stood up and shook his hand warmly. "What brings you up to the executive floor?" "I wanted to thank you, Mr. Rivera," Tony said, his voice emotional. "And I wanted to give you something." Tony handed Marcus a small gift wrapped in newspaper. "My grandson made this for you. He's 8 years old, same age as Sophia." Marcus unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a small wooden plaque that read, "World's Best Boss from Tony's family." "Tony, this is beautiful," Marcus said, genuinely touched. "But you don't need to thank me. You've been doing great work here for years." "No, Mr. Rivera, you don't understand," Tony replied. "Before you became CEO, I was just the security guard. Nobody noticed me, nobody asked my opinion about anything. I was invisible. But you changed all that. You made me feel like my work matters, like I matter." Tony paused, wiping his eyes. "Last month, when you promoted me to head of security and gave me that raise, I was able to move my family to a better neighborhood. My kids are going to a better school now. You changed our whole life." Marcus felt his own eyes getting watery. This was why he had worked so hard to transform Sterling Industries. It wasn't just about profits or efficiency reports. It was about real people with real families who deserved to be treated with dignity and given opportunities to succeed. "You earned that promotion, Tony," Marcus said. "You earned it with years of dedicated service and great ideas. I just made sure the company recognized what you were worth." After Tony left, Marcus sat alone in his office for a few minutes, thinking about how far he had come. On his desk, next to the new plaque from Tony's grandson, was a framed photo of Sophia and Elena. Next to that was his old janitor's uniform, hanging in a shadow box on the wall. Marcus had kept the uniform as a reminder of where he had come from and what he had learned during those 2 difficult years. The uniform reminded him that every person in the organization deserved respect, regardless of their job title. It reminded him that true leadership meant serving others, not just being served. His phone buzzed with a text message from Sophia. "Daddy, don't forget we're making cookies tonight." Mrs. Garcia bought all the ingredients. Marcus smiled and packed up his briefcase. Some things were more important than even the most successful business, and Sophia would always be the most important thing in his life. As he walked through the Sterling Industries building toward the exit, Marcus noticed things that made him proud. Employees were talking and laughing together in the hallways. The cafeteria was busy with people from different departments eating lunch together. In the lobby, He saw a manager helping a new employee find her way to the human resources office. These might seem like small things, but Marcus knew they represented something much bigger. They showed that Sterling Industries had become a place where people cared about each other, where collaboration was valued, and where everyone felt like they belonged. In the parking garage, Marcus saw his old Honda parked next to his new company car, a black sedan that Global Dynamics had provided. He had kept the Honda because it reminded him of his struggles and because Sophia loved riding in Daddy's old car. Some of his best conversations with his daughter happened during their drives in that beat-up Honda. Marcus chose to drive the Honda to pick up Sophia from school. As he started the engine, which still made that familiar clicking sound sometimes, he thought about all the mornings when this car had refused to start and made him late for work. Now those difficult mornings seemed like they had happened to a different person in a different life. Sophia's school was a much better one now. With his new salary, Marcus had been able to move them to a nicer apartment in a better neighborhood with excellent schools. But he had been careful not to spoil Sophia or let the money change who they were as people. Sophia came running out of the school building when she saw the Honda pull up. She was 8 years old now, taller and more confident than she had been during those difficult early years after Elena's death. But she still had her mother's bright smile and curious mind. "Daddy." Sophia climbed into the car and gave Marcus a big hug. "Guess what happened at school today?" "Tell me everything," Marcus said, pulling away from the school and heading toward home. "My teacher, Mrs. Peterson, asked us to write about someone we admire. And I wrote about you." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and love. "What did you write about me?" "I wrote about how you used to clean offices at night so you could take care of me during the day, and how you always helped me with my homework even when you were really tired, and how you became the boss of the whole company, but you're still the same nice daddy you always were." Marcus had to blink back tears. Sophia understood more than he had realized about their journey together. "Mrs. Peterson said my story was so good that she wants me to read it to the whole class on Monday. She said it shows that hard work and loving your family are the most important things in life." "Your teacher is very smart," Marcus said, "and I'm very proud of you, sweetheart." They drove through their new neighborhood past tree-lined streets and nice houses with well-kept yards. It was a different world from the small apartment where they had lived when Marcus was working as a janitor. But Marcus made sure Sophia remembered where they had come from. "Daddy," Sophia said thoughtfully, "do you miss being a janitor?"